Hey folks, today's a good day. It's a good day because I am getting back to cooking. My last several episodes were all about traveling to Australia and New Zealand, and those were great times. And if you want to check out the videos, I'll leave a link, of course, in the description. But you know what? We're back to cooking with this video. And today, it's a special Throw It On Thursday. It's special because I'm going to be making something my dad used to make all the time. I'm going to be making some fresh, homemade Polish sausage. Many of you might not know this, but I'm 100% Polish. Yeah, my name is Milanowski. It's kind of a Polish name, I guess. I was born and raised here in the United States, as were my parents, but my grandparents, they all came from Poland. They were immigrants. They came here, got jobs, and raised families. My dad, he was a machinist by trade, but on weekends, he enjoyed experimenting in the kitchen. One of the things he experimented with quite a bit was Polish sausage. I had a lot of great Polish sausage as I was growing up. And you know what? I think I'm going to try to make some today. The Polish sausage I'm going to be making today is going to be fresh Polish sausage. Not the smoked kielbasa you can get in the store. This stuff is great. I cut this up and put it in some soups and sometimes have it for breakfast. The Polish sausage we're going to be making is going to come from this pork butt. I'm going to be cutting this up and making this into, I hope, some pretty darn good fresh Polish sausage. My dad, his name was Ray, enjoyed weekends where he could get a pork butt, sit at the kitchen table and try to make the best Polish sausage out there. He kept track of every one of his attempts in this little notebook. Every time he tweaked the recipe a little bit, he wrote it down. This is a notebook my dad kept track of all of his Polish sausage recipes in. He documented it very carefully. He wrote down the date. This one was back in 1979. He wrote all the ingredients down, the quantities, and how much Polish sausage it made. Here we made a 10-pound batch back in April of '79. Every time he'd make a new batch, he would make sure he wrote down the exact quantities, trying to find that perfect Polish sausage recipe. He experimented quite a bit, and every batch he made, he documented. This by far was his favorite recipe. He made it originally back in 1985, but then again in 1989, 1994, and finally in 1995. My dad passed away in August of '95, so he made this just a few months before he died. We are going to be recreating this recipe because this was my dad's favorite, and I'm sure it's going to be great. The recipe we're following for my dad's notebook here is going to make an 8-pound batch of Polish sausage. This is actually a 9-pound pork butt, so I'm going to be trimming it up a little bit. There is a bone in it. I'm going to be using this bone to make some soup stock that we're going to be adding to the mixture. It's going to be used to moisten the meat up a little bit and also help bind the meat together to make that sausage have a really nice texture. We are going to be cutting this into sections that'll be able to be fit into our grinder with no problem. Probably little 1-inch cubes. Pork butts are the perfect cut of meat to use for Polish sausage. It's got the right fat to lean ratio. You need to have a bit of fat in your sausage to give it some good flavor. I don't even know how many Saturdays I sat there and watched my dad cut up pork butts for Polish sausage. Those were always good days. One of the other things my dad used to do for passing some time was he used to make knives. This is one of the knives he made. I think the blade is from an old hacksaw, and this aluminum handle he melted down and ground to the shape that he wanted. This is a really nice boning knife. If you have some bones that you need to get the meat off of. This works really good for that. Boy, this knife works so good for getting the meat off the bones. All right, that's a good amount of pork for our Polish sausage. I'm going to weigh this and see how much we have. Holy cow, it's almost exactly 8 pounds. A sign from my dad that this is going to be a good batch of Polish sausage. Now, let's take this bone and make some soup stock. This is a very simple soup stock that my dad used to make. He used to just put that bone in there, some celery, some onions, and a little bit of garlic. And finally, a package of G. Washington seasoning. This is like old school soup base. I think it was developed back in 1938. My dad, my mom used to put this in every soup they made and every gravy they made. We are going to let this simmer for a few hours, strain it off, and then cool it off. My father took great pains in documenting every one of these Polish sausage recipes. So we are going to follow this recipe exactly, exact quantities as he had written down back in 1985. I've seen a few other YouTubers out there that just kind of dump things in. We're not going to do that with this one. We are going to follow this exactly. Starts with 3½ tablespoons of salt, 3½ teaspoons of pepper, ½ teaspoon of mustard, a dash of nutmeg. This is a little strange one, a 1/4 teaspoon of pumpkin spice, a dash of cayenne pepper. This is the herb that I think really gives homemade fresh Polish sausage its flavor, marjoram. This is 3½ tablespoons. And the last of the spices is a couple cloves of garlic. I'm going to wait to grind this up with the meat. Okay, I've had this meat sitting outside for the last couple hours. It's about 12 degrees out there, so this meat is nice and cold now. I'm going to be pre-seasoning my meat before I grind it. That way we'll be able to mix up the seasonings a little bit better. We'll be mixing this up again after it's ground up just to make sure all the seasoning is well distributed. Oh, that's smelling good. That marjoram, the garlic, everything is bringing me back to my days of watching Dad make Polish sausage. Time to grind her up. My dad used to do this with a manual hand grinder. It took him a long time to do this. This electric grinder is really working really nice. My daughter got me this for Christmas. Thanks, Jamie. All right, the meat's all ground up. It's sort of a medium coarse grind I have on here. I split it exactly in half, and I'm going to put 2 cups of this soup stock in each one of these. This is going to help with the texture of the sausage a great deal. We'll mix this up really good. Both of these. And then I'm going to let this sit in the refrigerator overnight. We're going to stuff the sausage casings tomorrow. There we go. Tomorrow morning, This is going to be stuffed into some casings, and we are going to have some homemade fresh Pola sausage. It's now the next day, and it's time to take this Pola sausage and stuff it in some casings. Got my brand new sausage stuffer here. Let's see how this thing works. Fill this up with meat. Try to get all the air pockets out. Tying a little knot on the end. We're using natural hog casings here. Not too bad. I gotta tell you, this sausage stuffer really makes stuffing these sausages easy. I think there's going to be some more sausage making in my future. If you have any suggestions for types of sausages you'd like me to try to make, let me know. I'm always up for trying new things here, especially if there's a tasty meal at the end of it. Definitely looks like I made some good-looking Pola sausage, but how does it taste? Well, on this Throw It On Thursday, I think I'm going to throw that fresh Pola sausage on my lonely little grill out here. The way my dad usually cooked his fresh homemade Pola sausage was simply by boiling it. Well, every once in a while he'd grill it, so that's what I'm going to be doing today, grilling this Pola sausage. Currently I have this burner on and this burner off. I'm going to put it on the hot side first just to get it going, and then we're going to move it to the indirect heat side. Okay, I'm going to move it to the indirect side now and just let it finish there. Okay, let's see if we're done. Oh yeah, 183. We're going to let that rest a little bit, and then we're going to try our fresh homemade Pola sausage. Looking pretty good. And man, it smells so good. Time for my favorite part of any cooking video, tasting what I made. Fresh homemade Pola sausage. Let's see how it is. Oh yeah. Wow, that brings me back to weekends back at home, having Pola sausage freshly cooked. My mom and dad would usually make it, like I said, usually by boiling it, sometimes grilling it, but we always used to have cottage fries with it. Never any vegetables for some reason, but Pola sausage and cottage fries, a great combination. Oftentimes we dip it in ketchup, and that adds a little kick to it too. It really has a nice flavor. It's not salty at all. It has, I hate to say it, but sort of an umami sort of kick to it. Just a little bit of heat from the pepper and cayenne, but man, that marjoram, oh, that comes through, very herbal. That is some good sausage. I'm going to include the recipe in the description, and hey, give it a try. If you do, let me know how it was. Well, if you made it to this far in the video, I'd really like to thank you for sticking around watching the whole thing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Well, I had a really good day today. I am so glad my dad kept track of all these Pola sausage variants in this notebook. I think my brother Mark has another notebook with some recipes in there. I'm not sure what types of recipes. I'm going to talk to him and hey, maybe I'll make one of those. As I said before, I'm having a really good day today. I hope whatever you're doing, you're also having a good day. See you next time. Give this a try.